Okay, so yeah, as Jason said, I'm from Ccp-Em. So what is Ccp-Em? Start with a quick overview. So some of you might know Ccp-Em from the mailing list. We run a mailing list which is used for support for our own software, but also rely on, so you may well know it from that. Some people, when they say Ccp-Em, they mean the conference. There's an annual conference we hold. It's a software package, that might be why you're here now. Actually, it is all of these things. So just to explain what it is briefly, Ccp-Em stands for the Collaborative Computational Project for Electron Cryomicroscopy. There are a number of these CCPs in the UK. So, we're one of the younger ones, but we work quite closely with CCP-4, which is for the X-ray crystallography of proteins, and so I'll mention those as we go through. The role is to support scientists and software developers in computational aspects of kind of biological cryo-EM. We've been going since 2012 and funded by the MRC and the Wellcome Trust. As Jason mentioned at the beginning, we're at Harwell, so that's the Harwell campus, and in the research complex at Harwell building. You see on the photo on the right here, this is Diamond Light Source. We have EBIC over this side. We sit in this building here, so we're closely located with EBIC, and we share an office with the CCP-4 core team, so we get a lot of benefit from that. We share expertise and knowledge between the two projects. Ccp-Em run a number of events each year. So we have an annual conference called the Spring Symposium, which hopefully some of you have been to. If not, please consider coming along. It tends to happen around April or May time. It's been growing every year, and the talks from that are recorded and they're made available on YouTube, and proceedings papers come out in Active D. We also run software training workshops, both on our own software and others. So we've done workshops on Relion and also on Dynamo, software averaging as examples. We normally run 2 or 3 of those a year. We don't have any dates planned right now, but there will be some more coming up. Keep an eye on our mailing list for announcements, and the address is on the screen if you want to sign up. Show you the Symposium Proceedings can all be found online, talks from previous years. And with that, let's get on to the bulk of this talk, which is going to be about the software suite itself. That's what you get access to through SBGrid. So Ccp-Em is a suite of utilities for EM data processing. And the idea is to take different algorithms, different programs from various developers, package them all together, put an easy-to-use interface in front of them, and make it all work together as a suite. It's all based on a common Python framework. And behind the scenes, we use some programs from CCP-4, the project I mentioned before, which so these are programs that were originally written for crystallography tasks. Some of them have now been adapted for cryo-EM data, and we make use of those and activate those EM functionalities. If you're not getting this through SBGrid, you can download Ccp-Em from our website. I'll show you a bit later on. Available for Linux and Mac, and it's free for academic use. But if you want to use it for any kind of for-profit purpose, you need to get a commercial license. Please contact us for that. And do please contact us if you have any bugs or feature requests, the email address on the screen. So a quick overview of what's in Ccp-Em, the main packages that are in there now. I'll be going over all of these, so I won't dwell on this slide, but just show you there's a range of people involved. It is a true collaborative project. And I'll get started with single particle reconstruction. So that we've recently ventured into this area, and this is a collaboration with Shaw Sheris. So we now distribute a copy of Relion. This is pre-compiled Relion binaries, both for Linux and Mac. So if you ever try to build Relion on a Mac, you'll know it can be a bit painful. So you can now get that through Ccp-Em with no problems. On Linux, we offer support for GPUs using CUDA. And if you get the latest version of Ccp-Em from our website, that has Relion 3.0 in it. Once Relion 3.1 is made available as a stable release, we'll upgrade to that as well. And we have some longer term plans to integrate Relion more closely with the rest of the suite in future as well. Watch this space. One little thing I'll mention as well is a script called relayonit.py. This is a simple Python script that brings on-the-fly processing into Relion. So this automates image processing from raw movies all the way through to 2D and 3D classification. And the idea is you can use this to process your movies as they come off the microscope, try and get quick feedback on what your data is like, and allow you to modify what you're doing at the microscope if necessary. It's already in use to a number of cryo-EM facilities, and that number is slowly growing. With that, the title of this talk was Model Building and Validation in Ccp-Em, so I'm going to spend most of the time on model building tools. And this is a flowchart with an overview of the main stages involved and the main for them. So let's start with map optimization. So MRC to MDZ here, it's a bit of a cryptic name, but this is for map sharpening and blurring. LocScale is similar but much more sophisticated and doing it at a local level. We then have tools for docking or model building. So if you've got an initial model, you can start with either dock-EM at lower resolutions or MOREC at higher resolutions to do your rigid body fitting or docking. Don't have a model, you can use Buccaneer to do a de novo build. I'll show you a bit more about that later on. Once you've got your model docked, you then need to refine it, so make it fit better into the map in a more flexible way rather than just a rigid fit. And for that, at medium resolutions, you have FlexEM, high resolution, you have REFMAC. Again, I'll go over both of those later. And then you probably also need to tidy up your model, do interactive refinements, as when you're editing the model by hand or looking at it, checking where the good bits are, where the bad bits are. And for that, we supply a copy of Coot, the latest, greatest cryo-EM version. And we also interact nicely with Chimera, but we don't have our own copy. So let's get started with a look at the map optimization tools. The simplest one of these we have is still called MRC to MDZ. As I said, the name's a bit cryptic. This is named for the two file formats involved, so you're probably aware that many EM maps are in the MRC format, so that's 3D real space density. MTZ is a crystallographic format, so that's structure factors in reciprocal space. And that's what some of the CCP4 tools in particular like to work with. In this example here, we have a map from PDB up in the top left. This is a fairly famous example of beta-galactosidase, 2.2 angstroms. And you can see here in particular, this looks pretty noisy. The main chain is following a few bits of density through here, but it's not a very nice fit and it doesn't look very convincing. And what's actually happened here is this map has been over-sharpened. If you blur it by 60 square angstroms, then you suddenly see much more clearly where the main chain should go. And you can refine it against the blurred map and you get a different fit of that loop. With the MRC to MTZ tool, you get a user interface in Ccp-Em. You can enter an array of sharpening factors into that. So each of these different curves on the right here is showing you the effect on the structure factors of a different sharpening value. And you can see here we've got the original one here, and then we've progressively blurred that. You can see in this particular case that you'd want a nice kind of exponential fall off of these curves in this plot. And here the original in yellow is going off horizontal, so this is the indication that it's over sharpened. Here it looks like probably the purple or blue curves are probably best, so that's 40 or 60 square angstroms, and we saw actually that the 60 square angstrom blurring did work pretty well for that loop. I'll show you the effect of that in a moment, but of course we do expect this to vary locally, and that's a point I'll come on to in a moment with LocScale. MRC to MTZ links up quite nicely with Coot, so you can click a button in the Ccp-Em interface to open up all of the sharpened and blurred maps, and here we're looking at that same loop again. We've got all the different maps open simultaneously, so in purple is the original over-sharpened one, and then in progressive shades of blue we have the various blurred maps, and you can see actually visualizing all of them at once gives you a very clear indication of where the density should be. Moving on to LocScale, I mentioned that the ideal sharpening level might vary across your map. And this is particularly the case with flexible complexes or large things where the local resolution is different in different parts of the volume. So you need to do some kind of locally adapted sharpening, and that's exactly what LocScale does. So at the moment requires a refined atomic model, but Ian is working on removing that requirement. But at the moment this means you need to get an iterative process. So you build the model into the bits of the map you can see, then refine that, put it into LocScale. That will improve your map in the local regions, and hopefully that allows you to build a bit more of the model, and then you go around that cycle until it stops improving. Show you briefly how this works. You get a 3D reconstruction here, so that's your EM data, and you generate a density map from your atomic model. You compare the two in a rolling window, and you look at the program looks at the fall off of the structure factors in reciprocal space in each window, and then it effectively edits the structure factors in that window in the map to match the ones in the model, and thereby it improves the amplitude so that hopefully you get a better local scaling in each window. You see the effect of that. It's the same example again, this beta sidase with the problematic loop. Here's the original, it's over sharpened. If we look in the middle, this is after it's been through LocScale, and then after LocScale and rebuilding. This looks much like the effect of the MRC2MTZ tool. The key difference here is that with MRC2MTZ, we blurred the whole map, so the details in the middle of the structure would have been blurred out. With LocScale, the density should be more evenly good quality everywhere. It says on here, there are more details on Ian's paper. The details are at the bottom of the screen. He also gave a talk at this 2018 Symposium, so you can find his talk on YouTube and look at that. And the version of the program that's in Ccp-Em is now much faster than it used to be, and we've got this easy-to-use interface to make it easier for you to apply to your own data as well. The final tool we have for the map optimization function at the moment is called ProShade. So this is a new program with a few different functions that comes from Mikhail Tivkat and Gareth Moshodov's group. So it's got a few different functions, but this is very new, and we're just kind of getting to grips with how best to use it. So we will probably be integrating this into some of our existing job pipelines at some point, but at the moment it's just a standalone tool you can use if you want to. So moving on, you've got your optimized map and you're ready to start model building. What you do next is probably dock in a structure if you have one. If you've got a known structure for your particular molecule, or if you've got a homolog structure, you could try docking that in. High resolutions, we use a tool called MolRep. This is one of the CCP4 tools that's been adapted to work with EM maps. It's fast, works nicely at high resolution, can find multiple copies of your target, and it does have a sequence correction. So if you have a homolog structure, you can put in the sequence of your target and it will trim back the search model to only the atoms which are shared in common. For lower resolution, we have a tool called DocEM from Alan Roseman's group in Manchester. This does an exhaustive 6-dimensional search that's a little bit slower, but still pretty fast considering. You can use this to search a target region of interest, and then the key difference of this from something like MolRep and most other tools is that this gives you a table of ranked solutions. So rather than just giving you one best hit, it gives you a number of possible hits, and you can then open these all up in Chimera and examine them and decide for yourself which one is more likely to be correct. If you don't have an initial search model, you might need to do de novo model building. I'll mention Coot later. You can use Coot to do de novo model building as a manual process, but that's pretty laborious, and with a big model it would be very painful. So we have tools for automatic building instead. These Buccaneer and Nautilus, again, these are the CCP4 programs that have been adapted for working with EM maps. Buccaneer is used for building amino acid sequences, proteins, peptides, and Nautilus for nucleic acids, so DNA, RNA. These are very nice, powerful programs. You just give them your initial reconstruction, your map, and the sequence of your target, and it will then try and trace the sequence for you and build in the sidechains. Show you how that works. In cases where it works, it's very nice to watch. So it starts by finding these C alpha seed positions, growing possible chains from those, joining the overlapping ones that reduce the redundancy, linking fragments that line up in space, tries to identify the sequence by looking for the sidechain densities, filters away the poor quality ones, prunes away the ones that are inconsistent with the rest, and you can see now we've got a backbone that looks pretty good, and finally it builds in the sidechains. You see here how we've gone from an initial density map with nothing to a model that actually looks pretty reasonable, and the program's just done all that for us, so it's very nice. Here's some data on how effective this is. So we tend to recommend it's worth trying at any resolutions up to 4.5 angstroms. This plot is showing you how successful it is at building the C alpha backbone according to resolution. You can see at higher resolutions over on the left side of the plot here, it's reliably pretty good, so better than 2.5 angstroms. It will give you a decent model. Getting to lower resolutions, there's a lot more spread, so some models don't work at all, but some maps still work very nicely and still get 90% completeness. So we do recommend you give it a go even at lower resolutions, and it might save you a lot of work on the model building. This then shows the effect of the global sharpening. So I mentioned that And we saw in that example before how important this can be for the interpretability of the map when you're looking by eye. The same is true for interpretability when you're trying to do an automated model build. And so here we see if we sharpen or blur by various different factors, what happens to the Buccaneer success rate, and you can see it does fall off. There's a range in the middle where you can get away with a range of different sharpenings, but go outside that, in red you see that the sequence accuracy starts to fall away, and then in blue, less severely, you still also lose the ability to build the backbone as well. So that's the model fitting and building tools. Now we'll move on to the model refinement. So with high resolution models, we'd recommend you use the tool called Refmac 5. Yet again, this is a CCP4 tool that's been adapted. Gareth Mushtov's group have started to take quite an interest in cryo-EM, and they're doing a lot of work to improve Refmac and develop other tools for improving the refinement of EM models. We recommend this at high resolutions, so anything better than 4.5, 5 angstroms. It can do global or what we call local refinement. I'll show what that means in a minute. It automatically does the map to MTZ conversion for you internally, along with the sharpening factors. If you've worked out using the MRC to MTZ tool what sharpening factor you want, you can put that into this interface and it will apply it for you, and hopefully therefore do a better job of the refinement if your original map sharpening was wrong. And it also has the ability to incorporate additional restraints, and these are very important for stabilizing refinements at lower resolutions where the map information does not constrain the refinement so much. This is what I mean by the local refinement option. It's effectively an automatic box size adjustment. So cryo-EM reconstructions are often a molecule kind of floating in the middle of quite a large box. What that means is that the model doesn't actually explain the contents of the box very well, and so there's a lot of empty space. Firstly, that takes time. It causes your computer programs to run more slowly and use more memory, but it also means your statistics aren't so good. So here you can see the FSC average. This is the average value of the FSC curve across the resolution range we're considering. Starts at 0.39, goes up to 0.44. There's an improvement, so the refinement did something useful, but these are pretty low. This is a correlation coefficient, so we'd want it to be up to close to 1 in a good case where the model actually matches the density. Likewise, the R factor, there's a small improvement here, but if you know crystallographic R factors, you'll know 50 is not very good. This is not a convincing model. If we turn on local refinement, then Refmac automatically cuts out a box of density that's just big enough to surround the molecule and nothing more. Refines just that. So the first benefit is your refinement will run much more quickly. It's considering a much lower amount of information, but the second benefit is that your statistics get better. So this is the same model, the same map, but now the statistics are much improved. The FSC average ends up at 0.85, 0.86. The R factors are down to 26%. So this is these look much more convincing statistics, and it's easier to see that it's done a good job, and you get better statistics at the end of it. I also mentioned about additional restraints. So at lower resolutions in particular, there's not enough information to stabilize the refinement, and you can stabilize it by adding external information. So any sort of information you have that can help the program to decide where things should be. These diagrams are showing pro-smart homology restraints. So this is where you have a homolog structure available at higher resolution, and take distance measurements from the homolog and apply them to your targets, and hopefully that constrains things a bit. We also have, you can use ProSmart to do self-restraint, so if there's no homolog available, you can just say you want the molecule to stay similar to how it currently is, and that will help stop it drifting away from where it should be. The nucleic acid, so that's a tool called libg, which you can turn on in the Refmac interface in Ccp-Em. So this is restraints for nucleic acids that will ensure that base pairing is kept, parallel stacking of neighboring bases along the chain, and Pucko restraints for the rings. So all of that helps to stabilize the nucleic acids. And there's also this option called jelly body restraints, and these just serve effectively to slow the refinement down and stabilize it without having any particular length target in mind. So it's often a good idea turning on the jelly body restraints for cryo-EM refinements anyway, and particularly if you don't have any source of any other external restraints, jelly body can do a very good job of stabilizing just on its own. Just to show you what that looks like, there's a tool in ProSmart for editing these restraints. So these are homolog restraints generated for a target. You can see, I think the homolog is in green, and then in orange is the backbone of our target, and the restraints are all these other lines. They're colored according to the length. So where they're gray, they're about the same length as they were in the homolog. They're blue, they're a little bit shorter. Where they're red, you can see here they're quite a lot longer, and that implies in this target structure that these loops have moved much further apart than they were in the homolog. So we can delete those and then put that set of restraints into Refmac, and hopefully then the ones that are still relevant to the target will be preserved, but it's not going to be dragging things out of place that shouldn't be. Refinement is a pretty large topic, and particularly if you're working at low resolutions, it's complicated and important to get it right, and there's a lot of detail involved. So I'd refer you for more information to some papers from Garib's group on that. These are from the last few years, specifically dealing with application of Refmac to cryo-EM constructions and in the Ccp-Em context. Rob Nichols also gave a talk at our Spring Symposium in 2017, and there's a lot of useful information in it. So I mentioned how we use Refmac at higher resolutions for medium resolution datasets for flexible fitting. We have a tool called FlexEM, and this is a real space molecular dynamics based refinement. So this is now using a molecular dynamics simulation and constraining it with the map, so it tries to improve the fit. FlexEM is based on the use of rigid body definitions. So the idea is you can do a process that's called hierarchical refinement, where you start with the whole molecule as a rigid fit, then you might relax to whole domains, then to maybe secondary structural elements, and then finally, if you've got high enough resolution, you might consider refining all of the atoms. But the idea of this is you try and, again, it's a way of stabilizing refinement. If you go straight to an all-atom refinement, you'll find things will get morphed out of shape as they try and fit into the density, whereas the hierarchical approach tends to keep things in a kind of better global alignment. To show you the video again, this is a small example, but in yellow is your starting structure, which might have come from a homolog. In green is where it's supposed to be, and the gray shows the density map. See that it wiggles its way quite nicely into the density. This slide just to show a few examples of where FlexEM has been used to show the range of possible targets. It's quite a range of sizes of complexes and different resolutions. Can be very useful. Moving on to the interactive model refinement stage. For that, the tool we include is Coot. This is Coot version number 0.93, so this is the kind of pre-release of 0.9, which Paul is currently working on. And this is the branch that he calls the refinement branch. In his words, this is actively developed, less stable and more interesting. So in practice, this means that you've got a lot of nice new features, some of which are not so well documented or quite well hidden, but when they work, it's very nice. It also means there's more likely to be bugs, so if you do find any bugs, please do let us know. We've now got the build of that working on Mac as well as Linux, so you can play with the fancy new Coot to your heart's content on both systems. As I said, this version has some new features for cryo-EM, but also many performance improvements, and this particularly for dealing with large maps. So there's a lot of places where the Coot is now multi-threaded for rendering maps and doing refinements, that kind of thing. As you can see in this example, we have interactive validation markup. So here you've got a bit of a protein chain, and you can see in yellow we've got a twisted peptide, and then these spheres and dodecahedra are indicating the quality of the Ramachandran and the rotamer fits at each amino acid position. And then we've got the mole probity dots showing as well, showing the clashes or contacts between neighboring parts of the chain. Like I said, many of the new features in this version of Coot are a bit hidden, and it's probably best to get all the information about that from Paul himself. Very usefully, he gave a quite detailed talk about this at our recent ICNILD workshop on model building. The slides from that talk are available on our website, and I'll show you those in a minute. Moving on to the final stage, after you've got your model built, you then would like to validate it. I'll just mention as a side here that Ccp-Em is involved in this UK validation working group, so this is a collaboration of 6 sites looking at EM validation problems. And the aim is to produce new tools and guidance which will end up being distributed through Ccp-Em as well as available through the EMDB web interface. just highlight the importance of validation. This is making sure that our structures are correct. It's easy to deceive ourselves when we have a nice map and we want the model to fit. We obviously want to be correct, and we don't want to end up being cautionary examples used later when we've got something wrong. The other thing I think we should bear in mind is who is using these results. And there's an interesting figure we found out recently about the number of PDB users who are actually expert structural biologists, and it's a fraction of a percent. So the data we put in there, as structural biologists, we probably know to be a bit cautious in approaching it, to look at the raw data, consider whether it's likely to be correct. But a lot of the people who are using the PDB treat these data as perfect, and they will just use the models and assume they're correct. So it is a responsibility on us as depositors of structures to make sure they're as good as we can get them. One of the main tools we have for validation of models in Ccp-Em at the moment is the Refmac half-map validation pipeline. And this is a way of mainly of checking that the weight you're putting on a refinement is correct. So Refmac has a inherent in the way it works is that it has a weight that balances the geometric terms of your model to the density terms, so the information coming from your map. If you weight this too heavily one way or the other, you will get a bad model, either one that is heavily overfitted into the map or one that barely sees the map at all and has perfect geometry but doesn't bear any relation to your experiment. This pipeline allows you to get a handle on whether you're using an appropriate weight. So works by doing a standard refinement of your model against the full map. That gives you a model to map FSC curve. Then split back into the two half maps, scramble the model, refine it against one of the half maps, and then you compare that refined model against each of the two half maps individually as an FSC curve, and this gives you an idea of how much better it fits your working map than your test map. This is an example showing what those curves look like. If you haven't been overfitting, then the two curves overlay very nicely, like on the left here. On the right, you show see what happens if they're overfitted. And so here, the FSC between the model and the working half map is much better than the FSC between the model and the test half map. Of course, it's not necessarily the case you want zero overfitting. In this case, if you had set your weight far too low, you won't have any overfitting, but also your models won't fit the map very well. So you probably want a little bit of overfitting to show that you are feeling the effect of the map in your refinement, but too much is bad. So I'll move on now and discuss a few of the future plans. First is a new validation tool, which will hopefully be very useful to people trying to work out if they've got correct models. And then a couple of more map optimization tools, which are coming along in the next version of Ccp-Em. So model validation, this is a new tool that is being developed mostly by Acknowledgements in our group. The idea of this is to give you a kind of one-stop shop for model validation tools. So rather than have to run lots of different programs individually, you just put everything into this one tool and it runs everything for you and gives you a summary showing everything about your model. And so this is using Molprobity to look at the geometry of your model, also Kablam for slightly larger scale C alpha geometries. It uses a tool called Tempi, which Tempi is a toolkit that's available on Ccp-Em, and I didn't mention it yet, but it has a thing called the SMOC score, and this is a measure of the local density fit for your amino acid residues into the structure. So that gives you the kind of local density fit, and then we also use Refmac to calculate a model to map FSC curve, and this gives you the global density fit metric. This is what it looks like. The idea here is we've run the task, we've got a global and local results. Here we're looking at the local results, and we get a summary table. And you can see for each residue we get a list of whether it's a Molprobity outlier or Kablam outlier or a SMOC outlier, whether we need to fix the geometry or the density. There's then a tool, you can open this in Coot and it gives you a to-do list, and you can then click on these problematic residues, go and fix them in the structure, and so kind of work your way through fixing all the problems. You then get also a global results page, so this shows you the overall statistics for the structure, what are your Ramachandran outliers, C-beta deviations, the clash score, Molprobity score, and also your model to map FSC curves. So this is all the information you need to interpret your model and understand whether it is a good model geometrically and whether it's a good fit to your density. Moving on to the next couple of tools which are coming. LAFTER is the first one I'll talk about. This is actually available now in the latest nightly on the Ccp-Em website, which Jason said he was going to make available through SBGrid very soon as well. So if now you get access to Ccp-Em, you will have access to this soon. This is a map denoising filter. So the effect ends up being somewhat similar to LocScale. It's trying to weight the map in local regions to improve the density and give you something that's easier to interpret, but it's working in quite a different way. It stands for Local Agreement Filter for Transmission EM Reconstructions, and so the idea is to look at local agreements between the half maps, comparing the half maps in different spatial frequency bands to identify the features that are shared, preserve those, and then suppress the noise where the signal is the values in the half maps are not the same. And at the moment, we say this is very nice for map visualization and model building, but it's not so good for refinement. And that's mostly because the refinement tools try and estimate noise distributions, and in the LAFTER maps, there is not much noise to estimate anymore, so we think it wouldn't necessarily work so well. This is just to show you some of the effects. So in LAFTER, features that are strong and at high local resolution remain strong and at a high contour in the filtered map. So this is the original map in this case, and the LAFTER filtered one. You can see the connectivity is improved slightly. You maybe lost some slight density for sidechains, but overall they look fairly similar. If we drop down to low contours, then they look quite different. So here we've got the original with noise speckles appearing, some features coming off the sides of the protein chain. We're not really sure if they're accurate or not. The LAFTER filter map is suddenly much cleaner, and so you can see very clearly here where the pitch of the helix is, but you can see there's not much information supporting the placement of many of the side chains. The other new tool we've got coming, which is not yet available in the nightlies, but will be soon, is the FDR or confidence maps. This is a tool from Carsten Zach's group. This is applying the concept of multiple hypothesis testing to cryo-EM maps. So here you treat each voxel on your map as a hypothesis test. You calculate a p-value from it, and then you use a false discovery rate correction to adjust your p-values for the fact you're doing multiple parallel statistical tests. And so the idea here is we get to a map threshold where, as we say, a threshold of 0.99 or 1% FDR, we expect that 99% of the voxels truly indicate where there is positive density in the map. There's some examples of what that looks like, and you can see here it helps give a clearer indication of where these water molecules in this ion is, in this example, where this ligand sits, and some examples over here again where the density noticeably improves and is easier to interpret in the confidence map. Again, this is a new tool, so we're still working out how best to use it, but it's quite exciting. All right, at this point, I will switch to give you a demo of Ccp-Em. So let's show you what it looks like, and hopefully you'll get a feel for what it's like to use, and then we'll come back and just finish the last couple of slides. So Ccp-Em I've got installed already on here. I guess if you're getting it through SBGrid, you would also have easy access to it. So I'm just going to start up the interface. Let's have a look. So this is the Ccp-Em main GUI. A couple of features to note first of all. First, we've got in the title, it tells you it's Ccp-Em, and it tells you which version you're using. So here I'm using the latest nightly build. It's useful to keep an eye on that in case you have multiple different versions installed or you're not sure which one you're getting. Up here in the top, we have a big obvious button with a Ccp-Em logo on it. This actually takes you to our website, so I'll show you that. So you see it's jumped to my browser, taken me to the website, and we can see here, I mentioned earlier about Paul Emsley's talk about the new version of Coot. We can find that. So if we go to resources or documentation, tutorials and course material, we can find the teaching material from the last ICNAILD course. There's all the different lectures, and we see down here we've got a set of slides on cryo-EM model building with modern Coot. So if you want to know more about how to use some of these new features in the latest version of Coot, this is where to look. Okay, let's go back to Ccp-Em. I'm just going to switch here. At the moment we're looking at the list of jobs, and you can see I've run a few. I'll just switch to the projects view. So if you open up Ccp-Em for the first time, this is where you'll get to, because you won't have any projects, and it will probably ask you to add a project. So I'll just do that as an example. With my test project, I'll leave it in the default place, put in my username. The user is only really used as a convenience here, so it doesn't matter too much, but if it helps you keep track of your projects, then do use it. So I've opened a new project. It's now telling me at the bottom here that I'm in that project, this user, and that's where the project is. And you see in this project, I've run no jobs. Just go back. I can switch between projects by using the Open Project button down here. And there's this big button at the top, and I can use that to open up the file browser looking at the directory where the project is. So if I want to see any of the files, that's an easy way to do it. Going back to the jobs, you can see all the different jobs I've run in this project so far. Every job gets a unique ID number, which is on the left-hand side, and then you get the program type, title of that particular job, what the current status is, start and finish times. Get the directory where the job sits. So very easy ways to get, although I don't often use that part of the table, I must admit. Down the left-hand side, we've got the button at the top that goes to the website. Then we have all the different task buttons. And so you see here some of the different names I've mentioned in the talk. We're going to start right at the bottom, which is where a couple of helpful buttons are. First, there's About. If you click this, it tells you about this particular copy of Ccp-Em. So in particular, if you want to send us any, if you find bugs and you want to send us a bug report, it's very helpful if you can tell us what your version numbers are in here. You can also use this to change some of your settings if you need to, or find out where Ccp-Em is installed, what version you're using, where CCP4 is installed, whether it's found it correctly, that kind of thing. The other very useful button when you're learning how to use Ccp-Em down the bottom here is called Test Mode. So I'll just open up an example interface so you can see what they look like without. So if I open a new LAFTER task, you can see here I've got all the fields are empty. These fields for the input half maps are in red, and that means that they're invalid. I need to provide something here. So if I was going to run a job on my own data, this is where I'd start, and I'd fill in all the fields I need to. Test mode allows you to run jobs very easily just for yourself, so to check everything's working. So it's a good way of checking the program is working correctly on your system, and also seeing how the jobs look when they run correctly. If I turn on test mode, the button goes green. I'm going to go back and look at that interface again. You see now all these fields are filled in, so we've got the title, we've got the half maps already, nothing is red anymore. See here, just to talk you through a little bit more about how the interface works. Each input field has a tooltip, so if you need to know what anything is, hover over the entry or the label, and it will pop up a tooltip telling you what you need in that field. We also have various advanced options, which are often a little bit more hidden. So here we have extended options for LAFTER. If I click that, a new panel appears with a few more options that I can set if I need to. So that tends to be for more advanced users or special cases. I'm just going to show you what it looks like to run a REFMAC job. So I'm going to run a normal REFMAC job in test mode. The default test mode doesn't have a very useful title, so I'm going to change that. Here we can see a few of the different options that relate to what I told you about in the talk. So REFMAC is going to refine for us a model against a map. So we're giving it a PDB input here, a map. We have to tell it the resolution of the map so it knows what resolution of structure factors to consider when it does the conversion. And the local refinement box is here is ticked, and so that means it's going to cut out this automatic box size that just is enough to surround the model, and will therefore make the refinement faster and give better output statistics. If we need to, we can change the refinement options, various options. If we turn on here the nucleic acids one, this would include libg restraints in the refinement. The auto weight, if I turn that on and off, then I get the ability to set the weight. Otherwise, the weight is set for us automatically by Refmac. And the final thing here that's of interest for advanced users is this keywords box. So if you're an expert Refmac user and you know about how to use Refmac keywords and there are specific options you want for your particular job, you can just type them in here and they'll get passed straight through to Refmac. So it's very useful for advanced users. A bit more information about the interface in general. Up here we have buttons to control the job. So run, which I'll click in a moment to actually start the job. Clone, this allows you to copy the current job settings. The other one I'll cover for now is info. This gives us more information about what this task is. So it tells us this Refmac 5, which is for macromolecular refinement, and gives us a link to the online documentation. So all the different tasks should give you a link here, which allow you to find out a bit more about them. At this point, I'm going to start this job running, and this is going to take a few minutes, so then I'll show you some more about how the interface works by looking at another job. Just to begin with, you can see this is one of the bigger and more complicated jobs in Ccp-Em. When you start a job, you normally get taken to the pipeline view, and this shows you the different stages of the job, what's running, along with the outputs. So here, it's currently finding the BDB in the map, so there's to deal with the fact if the BDB might have an origin offset or something, we use a quick round of nullwrap to relocate the BDB into the map before we refine it. Over here on the left, we have stages which have gone green. So these are the stages that have run successfully already. They've already finished. We can look at the log files from those if we want to. In blue is the one that's currently running, and in grey are the ones that have yet to run. If there's an error at any point, the task will go red, and you'll get access to the error output as well as the standard out. We also have a tab called the launcher, and that allows you to view your results. Here we can see for the Refmac task that's running, we've got access to the map and the PDB. Once the refinement is finished, the results PDB will appear here as well, and we'll be able to open that. I'm just going to leave that running and switch back to a task I ran earlier. So I'm just going to look at this LAFTER example. You see here now with a job that has run, and the input values are grayed out, so this is a clue that you can't run this job again. It's run once. If we want to run another one very similar, I can use the clone button. I clone up here, I get a copy of that job. All the parameters should be the same, and so if I need to, I could run a few different copies of the same job by cloning repeatedly, changing a parameter. I want to try a few different sharpening factors in Refmac. Change those, click run again on each one, and you can run lots of jobs in parallel or one after the other once you see what the output's like. LAFTER has a much more simple pipeline. You can see here we've just got one stage that finished, so only a single log file here. This one, we have a few different files in the launcher, so by default it will open up for us one of the two half maps that went in and the LAFTER filtered output, but you do get access to others and you can select those as well. And then you can open them in your choice of molecular graphics viewer. By default, we have buttons for Coot, Chimera, and Ccp-4MG if you have them installed. LAFTER tends to work quite well with Chimera, so I'm just going to open that up and have a look. So now you can see that's opened up in Chimera, and it's loaded the two maps in for me to have a look at. While we're here, I can show you the effect of LAFTER on these maps. So you can see the half map in grey, the LAFTER map in yellow. The LAFTER map looks a little bit higher resolution. That's mostly because it's got access to the full data set. So if you combine the two half maps, it would look similar. The key difference comes when we start playing with the contour. So in the original half map, if we go right down close to 0, we get a lot of noise, dust appearing. It's very hard to see what's going on. Turn that off and do the same with the LAFTER map. Go right down to pretty much 0, and there's no noise anywhere. We're seeing the low resolution information at this point, but without the noise that obscures things. And if we go up to higher contours, we see the core of the molecule very nicely. While we're here, I can show you some of the other buttons up the top. So you've got this button here for open the molecular graphics viewer in this menu, but you also have direct buttons for that. So if I hit the Chimera button up here, that does exactly the same. I could also open them in Coot or Ccp-4MG. And for any job that is running or is finished, there is a job directory on disk, so you can get access to that. If I click the output button, it will open up a file browser, so I can now see the files produced by that job. Or I can hit the terminal button, and this will open up a new terminal. And this again gives me access to the files. If you like working on the command line, that can be a nice way of interacting with the results. go back and see what's happening with our Refmac job. That's still running, so this is doing the half map validation pipeline, and you can see it's done the refinement of half map against half map 1. It's now converting half map 2 into an MTZ file, and it will shortly move on and do the statistics and calculate the output. Just going to leave that finishing, and I'll turn back to one I ran earlier, but it's a bit of time there. So this is now what the results look like. Some tasks, as we saw with LAFTER, just have the log files, and they don't have yet at least much more in the way of data analysis, although we're working on that one. REFMAC is one of the better developed tasks, and so we get a nice results viewer. And so here we get results in the refinement stage. You get a table of the statistics, so here's what happened to the FSC average value and the R factor, and the geometry headline figures from the start to the end of the refinement. It tells us what weight term it selected in the auto weight. So if you want to edit the weight, this is where you'd start, and then you could adjust it in factors of 5 or 10 maybe. And then we get various graphs to look at. And so here we get the R factor graph showing how the R factor changed with the different cycles. Here we see the R factor pretty consistently improved. The bond lengths also improved, but in this one we can see the bond angles and the chiral restraints got slightly worse. We can also look at the FSC curve. So this is now showing us the model to map FSC. You can see this agrees pretty well over the range, so this is a reasonably good model. We can then turn to the validation tab. This shows us the same summary table for the refinement against the working half map. We get the FSC curve against the working half map and against the free half map here, and you can see the FSC with the free half map is a little bit worse, and therefore we are overfitting a bit at this weight. We're still working out how to judge these. Ideally, I'd say that probably a little bit too overfitted, so we probably would want to drop the weight a bit, but as I said during the talk, you do want a little bit of overfitting.
What is the acceptable R factor?
It's very hard to judge what an acceptable R factor and FSC figure are for cryo-EM refinements, because, as I said in the section on local refinement, they vary with the box size and with the size of the object, and with the resolution. So we don't have a kind of good rule of thumb. Like in crystallography, people know what a good R factor would be.
Generally speaking, if I can see the R factor going down, that would be okay.
If the R factor is going down, that's definitely a sign that your refinement is working.
Okay.
Yeah, it's certainly a very good indicator that something's gone wrong if you see the R factor climb up during the. Might just mean you've set the weight too low, but sometimes it can also be a sign that, say, your PDB file has an incorrect origin and is just nowhere near your map density. And
so in most cases, we see the FSC average number always high.
Always high.
Yeah, after refinement, you can see start is 0.6 and the finish is 0.8.
Yeah, that's definitely what you would expect. This shows you that the refinement has improved the fit of the model to the map. But what we can't tell you right now is, for a map at this resolution, what should the FSC be? So I think you have to use other validation tools to get an idea of how good your structure is, and ultimately you need to look at it by eye in the density and make sure you're happy with it.
So sometimes we have to provide this statistical result to review. So does it mean we can simply just copy this data figure?
Yes, at the moment, yeah. If you've done the refinement of your final model using Refmac and Ccp-Em, then these are the numbers you should take and give to the reviewers. In the next version of Ccp-Em, as I mentioned, there'll be this model validation tool, and we'd recommend you run that and then give the figures from that, because that will then be the comprehensive set of both geometry and fit to data measurements to provide.
Then the current result is sure the bond looks quite good, so going down, but the angle and chiral, they're going up.
Yeah, you sometimes see this kind of thing happens with models. It depends on what the model was like to start with.
Yeah, we can follow up on that.
We have a hard question from.
Let's follow up with the question at the end. Let's go through, we'll finish up, and then we can revisit when we come back.
Okay, yeah, and I've just got a couple of minutes left anyway. So
Yeah,
the final thing the final thing I want to show you on the live demo is opening up Coot from the Refmac job. So if I click the Coot button at the top, you get this nomenclature error warning, which you can usually ignore. If I open up Coot, then you can see this is the map and the starting model and the finishing model. You can see if I go and look over here, in brown is the model we started with, and in green is the refined model, and you can see in most places it does fit the density better. It was already not bad to start with, but the refinement has shifted it a little bit and improved things and given us a model that fits the density better. I think Paul is not going to be happy with me for showing Coot like this. Unfortunately, the laptop I'm using is a little bit old, and the rendering in Coot is not very nice. These atoms are supposed to be nice spheres rather than ugly squares. So if you see Coot running on a good system, it is very pretty now, but I'm afraid this isn't it. Okay, so that's everything I wanted to show in the live demo. I'll just turn back to the slides and just finish with some acknowledgements. So I just want to say, as I mentioned at the beginning, Ccp-Em is a collaborative project. This means we have a lot of acknowledgements. We work with people around the country and around Europe now. I should particularly acknowledge Tom Burmy, who did a lot of work on the Ccp-Em interface and has led the project for several years now. Some contact details, so our website, how to sign up on the mailing list. You can follow us on Twitter or email us directly at that address, so if you have any bug reports or comments on the software. And there's a couple of papers that describe Ccp-Em. I'll turn back to the SBGrid intro slide, and yeah, happy to take any other questions.
Great. If you have questions, feel free to send them. You can send them out by chat, and then we can sort of referee and pass them on. I can unmute, or you can unmute as we pass them on. Let's not all unmute and talk simultaneously. But if you've got questions and you'd like to ask them, let's go. Go ahead. Let's see if I got. Are you going to build a graphical interface to a sort of on-the-fly pipeline? The Rely on IT script requires, a certain amount of editing and tweaking and modification, and I was wondering if there's going to be a graphical element to that, so that people would be able to, people and facilities would be able to set that up a little easier.
So I'm just going to scroll back and find that, because there is a very rudimentary GUI there now.
Oh yeah, there is a little GUI there. Yeah.
So yeah,
I see it.
In the top right now, this is the little GUI that you can use to set up new jobs. So it takes care of some of the basic parameters for you. And then the idea is you just use the normal Reliant GUI to monitor progress. I agree, it's not ideal, and you would like something much more full-featured. This is a little bit in flux at the moment. Shores is currently working in Reliant 3.1 on a replacement for this, actually moving away from a Python script and going to something that's built inside Reliant and does have its own GUI. So he's still working on that. I'm going to be testing it in the next couple of weeks, I think, and we'll see how it goes. But it's possible that will replace the Rely on It script.
All right. Great. Anybody else? Any other questions? Well, it looks fantastic, and it's an amazing project. I think it's going to make a lot of the technical barriers to solving structures are going to get smaller for a lot of people. So thank you very much, Colin. It's great to see it. And if anyone, all the SBGrid members who would like to try out, these new map types in the nightlies, or you'd like to get a newer build, drop me an email. I can make sure you get it. And with that, I think we'll wrap up.
Okay, great. Thanks for hosting.
Great. Thank you.